My son and my daughter-in-law were plotting my ruin. But a phone call from my lawyer changed everything forever. For years, I believed that a mother's love was enough to keep a family together. I worked hard, I built my home with effort, and I wholeheartedly gave everything I had to my son and his wife. When I realized that my trust had been used against me, I felt the ground disappear beneath me. But it was in that abyss that an unexpected phone call reignited something in me that I thought I had lost, the strength to fight. This is the story of a woman who had everything taken away, but did not let herself be destroyed. Who faced the most painful betrayal but chose justice. Who rediscovered her voice, her name, and her worth when everyone expected her to stay silent. Today I can say firmly it is never too late to get back up. I am very happy that you are here. Follow my story until the end and comment which city you are watching from. I want to know how far my voice has reached. The sun was shining lightly on the window when I got up that morning. There was a lunch at Andrew's house, and something inside me said it would be special. Since the relationship had cooled, I longed for a gesture of reconciliation. I carefully chose my blue dress and put on the pearl necklace that Henry had given me on our last anniversary together. In that jewelry lived the memory of someone who once truly loved me. While applying a light lipstick, I felt my heart warm up. It was as if, finally, the wounds with my son were beginning to heal. I wondered if Heather would also be more receptive, if there would be laughter and dessert on the porch. Maybe I thought he had felt my absence. As I fixed my hair in the mirror, something seemed peaceful to me. But the tranquility lasted little. My cell phone vibrated on the dressing table, interrupting my thoughts. It was a short, almost imperative message: call me urgently. Don't go to that house. The number was Robert's, the family lawyer for decades. My chest tightened immediately. Something was not right. I picked up the phone with trembling hands and dialed. A text message arrives in the middle of her makeup routine. Call me urgently. Don't go to that house. Robert's voice sounded different, more serious, loaded with urgency. He said he needed to see me immediately, and that it involved the deed to the apartment. I tried to argue, saying I was going to my son's lunch, but he insisted. Do you trust me, Eleanor? He asked. I do, I thought. I always have. That is why I changed my route and went straight to the office. The elevator seemed slower than ever. My heart accelerated with every floor. There was something in Robert's tone that made me sense disaster. When I entered his office, he did not even try to disguise his serious expression. He sat in front of me with an envelope in his hand. He was about to tell me something that would change my life forever. You are no longer legally the owner of your apartment, he said. My legs went weak. What do you mean? I asked with a trembling voice. He pulled out papers, receipts, stamps. Everything there official. I ran out of air. My head was spinning. How was that possible? Had I signed something myself? Eleanor arrives with her heart racing and hears, you are no longer legally the owner of your apartment. Robert showed me every document with surgical calm. The deed had been transferred to Andrew months ago, with my signature notarized. I tried to remember when this happened, and then the tax prevention that Heather had insisted on so much came to mind. It is just a technical detail, Mom, Andrew had said. I signed. Now my son's words sounded like poison. How could I trust so blindly? Robert pointed out dates, values, records. Everything seemed legal, but nothing was legitimate. The pain of betrayal went through my soul like a silent blade. My son, my only son. The apartment of my dreams, of my life, was no longer mine. That signature, the fruit of trust, turned into a sentence. I looked at Robert without being able to hold back the tears. He handed me the final document with a stamp, seal, and everything else. My hands trembled as I held it. It was not just a paper. It was the symbol of the ruin of a mother's trust. She holds the document with trembling hands. What else did they hide from me? Robert took a deep breath before continuing. He said I needed to see more. He opened his notebook and showed me the screen. They were screenshots of conversations between Andrew and Heather, obtained legally by a contact of his. In one of them, Heather said, "She is a dead weight." I read that sentence like someone reading a death sentence. I was the obstacle, the burden. My eyes burned, but I kept looking. In another message, Heather insisted, "We cannot go on with the debt with her around." Robert explained that they had used the apartment as collateral for a loan of $2 million. Money that I never knew existed. Money that, apparently, did not go to any renovation or improvement. Andrew did not respond to his wife's insults. But he also did not defend his own mother. His silence screamed in my soul. It was as if I had disappeared from the map for them. Just an inconvenient figure occupying a space that was too valuable. I took a deep breath, swallowing the bitterness of the truth. The lump in my throat became unbearable. And then with a low voice, almost inaudible, I whispered, "Eleanor whispers they plan to get rid of me." Robert opened another folder. More screenshots, more absurdities. Heather said the best thing would be to wait for the old woman to give in to speed up the sale. They used the term occupant as if I were an intruder. "We will remodel everything after the old woman leaves," she wrote. That was not just betrayal. It was premeditated cruelty. I mentally relived all the dinners, the Christmases, the advice I gave Andrew. Every affection now seemed to mock my innocence. They intended to renovate the apartment and sell it for a high profit. And me? A burden to be removed with a little trick. "We will do it with care, she will understand," Andrew said in a message. Understand? What was there to understand when one is betrayed by one's own blood? I stood motionless, paralyzed before the abyss that opened at my feet. Nothing I did for them served as a shield. I was just an obstacle. A nuisance. A disposable old woman. "We will remodel everything after the old woman leaves." My breathing became uneven. I felt my chest tight, my soul crushed. The tears came without control, like a flood of accumulated hurts. I cried everything that had been held back for years. Every gesture of love of mine, now trampled upon. Robert brought me a tissue, respecting my silence. He looked me in the eyes firmly and said, "You still have a choice." He explained that there were ways. That we could investigate more, record conversations, assemble a dossier. That there were laws that protected me no matter how late it seemed. The flame that burned weakly in me gained a breath of life. I wanted justice. More than that, I wanted my dignity back. That woman who created a business from scratch, who overcame grief, could not end like this. I took a deep breath, wiped my face, and nodded. Robert smiled for the first time since I arrived. It was the beginning of something bigger. Eleanor faces the mirror, they messed with the wrong woman. Robert brought a man with an attentive look, named David. An experienced investigator, discreet. He already had results in his hands. In a few days he discovered that Heather maintained frequent conversations with 3 different realtors. All of them had visited the building, taken photos of the facade, and even talked to doormen. The apartment was already being offered, even with an elderly occupant, as they described it. The information hit me like hammer blows. How could they act so far in advance, as if I were already out of the way? Heather spoke to the realtors with enthusiasm. She promised a renovated and profitable property as soon as the lady's situation is resolved. I was the situation. I was the obstacle they needed to remove to make room for profit. Only they did not count on my resistance. Robert handed me the cell phone. "You need to hear this." I pressed play. It was a recording of a call between Heather and a realtor. Her voice was clear. "Without hesitation, we get her out of there. Then it is certain profit." My stomach turned. It was no longer about assets. It was about lost humanity, about coldness. They spoke of me as if I were an old piece of furniture. "Eleanor receives the audio, we get her out of there. Then it is certain profit." With the pieces of the puzzle in place, I saw everything with frightening clarity. Heather and Andrew mortgaged the property, used the money, and now wanted to eliminate the risk. I was the risk. They never imagined I would find out. The plan was simple. Evict me and sell the renovated apartment for 3 times the value of the loan. It was numbers, calculations without any trace of affection. Robert detailed the contracts, cross dates, values. Everything fit together. The coldness was mathematical. Each step had been carefully planned. In text messages, Heather said that I was docile, that I wouldn't react, that I would accept because I had nowhere to go. Their confidence in my passivity hurt more than the words themselves. I, Eleanor Parker, was being treated as a figure to be discarded in the flow of a profitable business. I was a mother, a grandmother, the founder of a small empire of cakes and sweets. But, for them now I was just a statistic of obstacles. An old name on a deed. A delay that prevented maximum profit. She is docile, she will accept. Robert looked at me more serious than ever. He said we had elements, but it was not enough yet. We needed more, a confession, direct proof, something undeniable. And then he pitched the plan to me: pretend that I accepted leaving. Simulate surrender. Let them feel comfortable, confident until they verbalized everything. The truth recorded, word for word. My heart tightened. It was like wearing a mask in the face of death, pretending weakness in front of those who hurt me. But something in me awoke. A primitive instinct for protection, for justice, for survival. I would not accept disappearing like this, neither as a mother nor as a woman. It was not just my home. It was my name, my story. I took a deep breath, finding strength where I thought there were only shards. If it was necessary to act, I would act. If the price of truth was to endure one more disappointment, I would pay it. Because in that game of lies, my pain would be real, and my victory too. Robert held my hand as if saying, now it is up to you. Eleanor takes a deep breath. I am going to the lunch. But not to eat. That night I did not sleep. I kept reviewing every step of my life until then. I remembered the old oven from the first bakery, the late nights awake preparing dough. How much my hands hurt at the end of the day, but still I smiled. Every penny saved with care. Every dream built with flour, sweat, and hope. I inherited nothing. I conquered everything. And now, about to be torn from what was mine by right, I realized that the battle went far beyond the property. It was about my worth. About my history. It was not revenge, it was justice. When I looked back at the mirror, I saw my mother inside. A woman of fiber who never bowed to anyone. In that reflection, I understood what was at stake. And I said aloud, almost like a silent vow, it is not for me. It is for everything I built. It was there that weakness gave way to decision. And if before I cried for having been betrayed, now I stood up for everything they made me capable of enduring. It is not for me. It is for everything I built. Robert, always pragmatic, designed the next step. We needed a recording where they spoke openly about the plan. Not just insinuations or screenshots. We needed it to come out of their mouths. And the perfect occasion would be a new lunch. An emotional trap. Where, confident in my surrender, they would reveal their true face. I felt divided. Part of me wanted to protect myself, to run away, to forget. But the other part, the one born from the ashes, knew it was now or never. Could you handle hearing your son selling you? Robert asked. That sentence pierced me. I did not know. But I would have to find out. I needed to hear it to the end to be able to start over. I looked at the office window. Outside, everything seemed to continue at the same pace. But inside me, something was changing. I was no longer the docile mother they thought they controlled. And if that was the only way to prove who I was, then so be it. I was willing to face the pain one more time. But this time for me. Could you handle hearing your son selling you? I took a deep breath and did what needed to be done. I grabbed my cell phone, installed the audio recorder in the bottom of my purse, and tested the volume. I rehearsed my tone of voice, my expression, like someone preparing an actress for a difficult monologue. It was not a lie. It was the sacrifice necessary to reach the truth. I fixed my hair firmly. I put on a discreet earring, a light blouse, and opened the phone book. My fingers trembled, but I dialed firmly. Andrew answered with some surprise. Hi, Mom, he said with a cautious voice. I smiled, lying sweetly, and proposed the meeting. I want to talk. In peace. As a family. He accepted without hesitation. Heather in the background seemed satisfied. They fell for it completely. The lunch was set. The stage mounted. The scene written. And I ready to play the most difficult role of my life. That of a betrayed mother who, in silence, was returning to be a hunter. Of course, Mom. Let's talk as a family. I arrived at Andrew's house with a heavy heart, but a serene face. The electronic gate opened slowly, as if hesitating to receive me. Heather came to me with a fake smile and a quick kiss on the cheek. It is so good you came, Eleanor, she said, and led me to the living room. The table was set with elegance, aligned cutlery, linen napkins, wine glasses. Andrew entered right after, wearing his attentive sun mask. I prepared your favorite dish, Mom. I sat down carefully, my purse on my lap, the recorder already running. Heather poured the wine and talked with forced lightness about the weather, the traffic, the flowers on the porch. Every sentence was a theatrical rehearsal. But I did not respond, I just listened and memorized. The food arrived. It was mushroom risotto, a recipe I taught Andrew when he was still little. I swallowed hard. The taste, once full of memories, now made me nauseous. Then, in the middle of a speech about renovations in the apartment, Heather let out like someone commenting on the weather forecast, "Soon we will get rid of the occupant." Silence fell for a second, but no one apologized. Heather comments, "Soon we will get rid of the occupant." I pretended not to hear. I kept my gaze calm, my hands on my lap, the glass intact in front of me. Andrew then took a deep breath. He said he had been worried about the family's financial future, and that the apartment required care that I could no longer maintain. I let out a light sigh, as if I understood. Inside, every word of his was a blow. "We are trying to do everything with care," he completed. Heather, smiling, said they researched alternatives. "We thought of a good shelter close to a park. It has activities for the elderly, it is airy." I nodded, as if that were reasonable. As if they were not deporting me from my own history. Every sentence was crueler than the last. I felt like screaming, but I continued acting. The recording needed to be clean, objective, undeniable. I could not demonstrate anything. Just listen. My son spoke of me as a heavy expense. The woman who raised him with so much effort was now a budgetary problem. But I would endure everything. For now. We thought of a good shelter close to a park. The lunch went on, and at a certain point, Heather walked away to answer the phone. I followed, silent, getting close enough to hear without being noticed. "Yes, everything is right. The old woman is docile, she will sign." That was it. The final confession. There were no more doubts about what they were plotting. Eleanor, was reduced to a hindrance to be eliminated. I went back to the living room and asked to leave. My eyes were already filling up, but I would not let them see. When I closed the door, I released the air that was trapped in my chest. I walked with firm steps to the car, took a deep breath and held back the crying. Only after starting the engine did I let the tears flow. But I also smiled. I picked up the cell phone, opened the application, and sent the complete audio to Robert. I wrote just one sentence with my hand still trembling, but with my soul standing tall. "Now we have what we need." Because there, in the midst of pain, I knew that would be the beginning of my victory. She sends the audio to Robert. "Now we have what we need." The next day I sat down with Robert and Rick, a civil lawyer recommended by him. It was time to act. The conversation was technical, precise, without room for hesitation. Rick explained the plan: file an action for nullity of the deed, request an urgent precautionary measure to prevent any transfer, and prepare a judicial approach at the notary office. But first of all, I needed to act one more time. "You are going to call saying you accept leaving," Robert said, looking firmly into my eyes. "You will ask for a small monthly allowance and suggest that they schedule a meeting to formalize everything." The trap needed to be perfect. They had to believe in my total surrender. And the more secure they were, the more exposed they would be. It was difficult to digest the plan, but I knew it was necessary. That pain needed to bear fruit. I was no longer just reacting, now it was I who was leading. I went back home with 1,000 thoughts and one certainty: nothing they did to me would go unpunished. I was setting up my own liberation with justice on my side. "You're going to call saying you accept leaving, and schedule a meeting at the notary." In the late afternoon, I gathered courage and dialed Andrew. I adjusted my voice to sound downcast, hesitant. I said I had reflected, that I did not want any more conflicts, that I just needed a monthly help. He hesitated for a moment, but soon Heather appeared in the background. She took the phone and said, "Of course, no lawyers. It is a family thing." That phrase was music to our ears. They were convinced. The meeting at the notary was scheduled for 3 days later. "We will resolve this in the smoothest way possible," she said. I just thanked her, swallowing the bitter taste of the act. I hung up the phone and called Robert. The bait had been taken. With each step, justice was getting closer. And even with my heart in pieces, I felt proud not to have retreated. It was my name, my story, and they were not going to erase it. It was all a matter of time and strategy. Of course, no lawyers. It is a family thing. In the following days, I did what needed to be done. I rehearsed my lines in front of the mirror, tested expressions of fragility, soft words. My posture had to be that of someone who accepts, but my eyes carried the fire of someone who fights. Every morning was an exercise in self-control and courage. The broken woman from the beginning no longer existed. Facing the mirror, I stared at that new version of myself. Docile on the outside, steel on the inside. The table was set, the players in place. And when the time came, I would be ready. My pain had turned into armor. The crying now was discipline. The weakness, tactics. Justice would not come only through the hands of lawyers. It would also come through my courage. Rick confirmed the presence of the bailiff. Robert prepared the documents. Everything was ready. The notary office would be the stage for the turnaround. And this time there would be no audience, only truth. I, Eleanor Parker, had reached the turning point. And there was no turning back. In that notary office, justice will enter through the door. The morning dawned cloudy, and it seemed the sky shared my burden. I walked to the notary office like someone carrying more than a purse. I was carrying the entire history of my dignity. I entered alone as planned, and found Heather already sitting, with a small, cynical smile. Andrew, beside her, maintained a tense posture, but tried to look calm. The notary greeted us and began the formal reading of the document. It was the total renunciation of ownership. The text seemed endless. Every line was a stab. The declaring party waives any right over the property located on the street. My name there reduced to a formality. Heather crossed her legs, satisfied. Andrew picked up a pen and looked at me. "Let's get this done," he said, clearing his throat. My hand trembled when I brought the pen to the paper. The theater was at its peak. The notary turned the page, waiting for my signature. Time seemed to stop. And then, like lightning, the door opened with force. 4 people entered: Robert, Tracy, Rick, and Agent Daniel. The room filled with authority. Heather turned pale. Andrew was paralyzed. Andrew clears his throat. "Let's get this done." Agent Daniel raised his hand and declared firmly, "Mr. Parker, Mrs. Parker is under protective custody." Heather tried to argue, but was silenced by the look of Prosecutor Tracy. Robert presented the documents. Rick explained the legal situation. The notary interrupted everything. There would be no signature that day. There was a higher order at play. The tension was palpable. Andrew stood up abruptly, but was restrained with a gesture from the officer. Heather, motionless, squeezed the purse on her lap. The game had turned. There, before their eyes, the force of justice imposed itself. And I, for the first time in weeks, did not need to say anything. Just watch, as a victim but no longer as powerless. Tracy approached and lightly touched my arm. "It is done, Eleanor." And it was as if that gesture ripped an invisible weight from me. I sighed long, deep. The deed was suspended, the property frozen, and the couple was removed under escort. The pain that accompanied me dissolved into silence. I was finally protected. "Mr. Parker, Mrs. Parker is under protective custody." On the way out, Robert accompanied me to the sidewalk. The light wind messed up my hair, but my face remained serene. "Now the trial begins," he said. It was not just the judicial process, it was the moral, emotional judgment of what they had done to me. The stage was set. The facts gathered. And my voice ready to be heard. Now the trial begins. The courtroom was full. People entered in silence, like someone participating in a ritual. I sat next to Robert, while Tracy arranged folders and audios. The judge entered and everyone stood up. My heart beat like a deaf drum. The first phase began. Tracy presented the audios of the lunch, the messages, the documents. Every piece of evidence was an open scar in front of everyone. Rick complimented with the chronology of the facts. The dates, the contracts, the mortgage. Every stage of the scam revealed with surgical precision. Heather kept her pose, the cold look, as if she still believed in some way out. Andrew seemed smaller, shrunken. The judge listened attentively. His pen marked points while the evidence accumulated like bricks of an undeniable truth. The silence of the room was broken only by the audios. My voice, "There's the plan being exposed." Everyone heard when Heather said, "The old woman is docile, she will sign." Everyone heard what they did to me. I remained firm, but inside the entire past churned like a turbulent sea. What I had endured now had a name and a form. The judge will hear everything in detail. They called me to testify. I stood up with weak legs but with a firm soul. I walked to the center of the room and looked at the judge. I spoke of everything, of the betrayed trust, of the deed, of the cruel words. I told that I was called a load, a hindrance, a dead weight. I told of the day I heard my son sell me with naturalness. And finally, of the pain of having been used by whom I bore. My eyes sought Andrew's. He lowered his own. There was no more courage nor escape. I also spoke of who I was, the woman who built everything with her own hands. The mother who forgave small failures until being destroyed by a big one. The elderly woman who did not bow, even when everyone expected her to give up. The entire room listened in silence. My story finally had an audience. I did not cry, but my voice carried the weight of someone who lived every second of that. I spoke for myself and for so many who are silenced. I returned to my seat and held Robert's hand. He whispered it was perfect. But nothing there was a rehearsal. That pain was too real. And now it was there, documented before justice. I felt I died while alive. The judge asked for the expert's word. A specialist in forensic psychology confirmed what everyone knew. There was emotional manipulation, coercion disguised as care, financial abuse. The technical description turned into law what I felt in my chest. Tracy reinforced the request for annulment of the deed, moral reparation, and sending the case to the criminal prosecutor's office. After hours of exposition, arguments, and documents, the judge suspended the session. His voice was calm but firm. The sentence will be read tomorrow. Everyone stood up. I took a deep breath. The weight was still there, but also the hope. I left the court like someone carrying a cross, but certain that I was no longer carrying it alone. The sentence will be read tomorrow. The courtroom hall was taken by silence. Every chair occupied, every eye fixed on the judge. My heart beat like a war drum, while I held my breath, waiting for the words that would change everything. He began the reading, paused, without haste. I declare null the deed registered in the name of Andrew and Heather Parker. The words seemed to float in the air. The ownership of the property returns entirely to Eleanor Parker. My vision became blurry. My fingers squeezed one another with force. The debt contracted through mortgage falls legally on the beneficiaries of the annulled deed. It was as if the world stopped for a second. I won. I, who was almost expelled from my own life, now received back what I built. No one gave me anything, it was I who fought for everything. And I won. I wanted to scream but I could not. The relief was silent, dense, absolute. The judge's eyes met mine and he nodded slightly. It was official. It was real. My home was mine again, and now engraved in history was the name of who tried to take it. But also the name of who had the courage to fight. Eleanor squeezes her hands with force. I won. The judge continued. I determine moral indemnity in the amount of 700,000 pesos, to be paid jointly by Andrew and Heather Parker. I heard a murmur in the audience, but my eyes were turned only to the two of them. Heather, for the first time, trembled. Her hands sought support. The veneer of control had broken. The mask fell. The judge also ordered the files to be sent to the criminal prosecutor's office, due to clear indications of coercion and financial abuse. Tracy did not smile. She just nodded, professional as always. But I saw in her eyes a shine of mission accomplished. Full justice. Justice for someone who, by a little, did not have a voice. Now my voice echoed throughout that room. Robert squeezed my shoulder. Rick shook the prosecutor's hand. But I did not move. Still absorbing everything. The woman who entered there wounded, now left whole. The court was more than a space for decision. It was the altar where I deposited my pain and received my reparation. But at the bottom of the joy a question whispered. Heather, for the first time, trembles. I returned to the apartment hours later. I entered slowly like someone stepping into a temple. The lights were off. The silence filled every corner. I sat in my favorite armchair, the same one where I heard childhood laughter, where I waited for phone calls that never came. I took a deep breath and cried. But not from pain, I cried from liberation. There was no more weight on my shoulders. Nor fear nor shame. I had faced the worst and returned alive. But even with the complete victory, the echo of that betrayal still lived in me. The home was mine, the name too. But did I still have a son? Did Andrew still exist under the rubble of what he did? I closed my eyes and hugged myself. For the first time, I understood that justice and reconciliation do not walk side by side. Sometimes one comes without the other. And maybe that needed to be enough. But my heart, although wounded, did not know if it would be able to forget what hurt so much to remember. But do I still have a son? Days later the phone rang. It was a known number, but the voice on the other side seemed different. "Mom, it's me. Andrew." He spoke slowly, without demanding, without dramatizing. He said he was separated from Heather, that he lost his job and started therapy. He said he did not want pity, just to return something, even if it takes a lifetime. I stayed silent. I heard every word, like someone listening to rain falling from afar. He admitted he failed, that he was weak, that he chose the easiest path alongside his wife, that he got lost in the midst of pride and fear. I was weak. I lost you. The sentence echoed inside me. I did not answer that day. I just listened. I hung up with my soul in conflict. Part of me wanted him to suffer. Another part wanted him to come back. Not like before, but like someone new. Someone who finally understood the value of a mother, and of a woman who fought to be seen beyond that. Eleanor listens in silence. I was weak. I lost you. Months passed. Andrew began to deposit small amounts into my account, without notice. He also sent letters written by hand talking about childhood, about regrets, about the new man he wanted to be. I did not reply, but I read them all. I kept them in a blue envelope, together with old photos. The process of forgiveness was not linear. There were days I thought about forgiving him. Others I could barely remember his face without feeling anger. But something changed slowly. It was not love that was reborn, it was compassion. And above that, it was freedom. I was rebuilding something that not even I knew had broken: trust in myself. Because before any reconciliation, I needed to reconcile with myself. With my mistakes, my blindness, my pain. Only then could I look at Andrew with other eyes. Forgiveness is not a gift. It is a crossing. A long, arduous, and silent crossing. Forgiveness is not an event. It is a process. A year later, I inaugurated a new space. I called it Casa Eleanor. There, women learn baking, but they also learn about their rights, their strength, their voice. It is not just an atelier, it is a refuge. A place where no one is treated as a dead weight, nor as a disposable detail. It is where courage is served together with coffee. I told my story there many times. I saw other tears meet mine. I saw calloused hands gain purpose. Women who arrived as victims left as leaders. That was what I wanted to leave in the world. Not just cakes, but new memories which are born from self-love and awareness. One afternoon, while organizing the jars on the shelf, I heard the door open. Andrew entered with 2 coffees in his hands. He stopped in front of me without saying anything. I sat down. He sat down too. The coffees between us, the silence full of meanings. It was the beginning of something new, something that perhaps one day would be called forgiveness. Eleanor looks at the door. Andrew enters with 2 coffees. They sit down. Slowly, forgiveness begins. The apartment became a home again. The windows are always open, and the balcony now blooms with vivid colors. The smell of cake in the oven fills every corner, like an invisible hug. Students gather around the counter, swapping stories, learning recipes, and mainly rediscovering themselves. The space pulses with life, affection, and reconstruction. There is no silence of abandonment nor walls marked by sadness. There are voices, laughter, and the smell of hot hope coming out of the oven. I walk among them like someone watering seeds, watching everything bloom. And whenever a woman feels too small to start over, I remind her aloud. Here, no one is a burden. Here, everyone is worth gold. My story stopped being just mine. Now it is a seed for other journeys. I tell every chapter with truth without omitting the pain, but always highlighting the turnaround. Some cry with me, others smile recognizing themselves. From victim I became a voice. From invisible a reference. I am no longer just Andrew's mother. Today I am Eleanor, whole, firm, standing. And I say this looking into the eyes of every woman who listens to me. I am Eleanor. And you can be too. On a calm afternoon, I receive a new shy student. She sits, observes, learns in silence. At the end of the class, she hands me a folded note, with insecure but sincere letters. Thank you for showing me that there is still time. I press the paper against my chest. Those words say everything. My past hurt, but my present heals. I close my eyes for a moment. Outside, the city follows its rhythm. Inside here, time is different. Made of reconstruction, of affection, of warm bread shared with courage. I open my eyes, smiling with a light heart like I had not felt in a long time. Eleanor smiles with teary eyes. The past was left behind. The future is sweet. Now I am curious about you who heard my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever gone through something similar? Support the channel, subscribe, like, comment, and share this video. I am leaving on the end screen another story that you will also like, and it will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching. Until the next video.